We're going to move on now to three presentations which are to do with the practical implementation of SuDS. So the first of these is about retrofitting SuDS in residential development, and this is going to be delivered by Sue Illman. Sue Ilman is Managing Director of Ilman Young, a landscape architectural practice based in Cheltenham. She was President of the Landscape Institute from 2012 to 2014. She's well known for her advocacy work promoting integrated water management and SuDS through interprofessional collaboration. Sue believes that the integration of grey, green and blue in urban landscapes has never been more relevant, and she will promote this as a champion for flood mitigation and resilience on behalf of the Construction Industry Council. Sue.
Okay, so you'll actually notice I've titled this Building Resilience in Urban Areas, because I think it's really important that we can think about this in terms of that context that Lord Krebs has talked about. So why do we need to retrofit? Well, I think we've already talked about a lot of this today, but just to reiterate, more extreme and prolonged rainfall events, and the fact that towns and cities historically located on rivers, lovely one outside, and the impact of the fact that fluvial flooding exacerbates the issue of pluvial flooding. The fact that these days we're densifying our towns and cities, the amount of urban creep that's happening, and indeed the impact of upstream development on those towns and cities. We also understand that combined sewers have a limited capacity and were never designed to take the amount of water that's currently going into it. And as a consequence of that, the large numbers of homes and businesses that are currently at risk. And also, looking at these estimated costs, I mean, who knows, potentially tens or hundreds of millions of pounds, and that's absolutely dependent on how we can build resilience and the amount of protection that we can provide. So what we need, if we're going to build resilience, is an absolutely comprehensive and long-term approach and commitment to how we're going to deal with this increasing problem. And this, I like this little graph. It's one that, based on research that MWH did for Welsh Water to inform their flow reduction strategy. But what it says quite graphically is how much the problem is going to increase if we continue as we are, and how controlling all future new development really makes not very much difference at all. And it's only if we do control all that future new development and make significant inroads in terms of reducing the existing problems that we have, that we're going to hold the problem even at the level that we have today. And I think that is really what should be the wake-up call as to why we need to retrofit. So how can it help? Well, the point is that the interventions that we make are incremental, but each one makes a difference because it has an immediate, albeit perhaps quite small, effect. But all those multiple interventions inherently build much greater resilience into our towns and cities. And by looking at all these different ways we can do it, we've got a flexible approach as to what we can do, and that can provide great value for money. But what we must do is just develop this mindset that says, when we're making interventions in the urban landscape, let's consider SuDS first. Can we do it, and what can we do? So we need to consider its application everywhere and integrate that with planned works that are happening all the time in the urban landscape. I was coming along today in a taxi and looking at the new superhighway along the embankment. Are there SuDS integrated in that? No. Why not? Good question. So if we want to actually do this, what we must do is align this with all the other objectives that are happening around us all the time. So we can align it with public health, we can align it with improvements to green infrastructure and biodiversity, and of course, importantly, with water quality, and from my point of view in particular, with placemaking. All of the things that the SuDS manual talks about. But we must do this all the time and everywhere. And we know it is effective. Portland have had a fantastic history over the last 25 to 30 years and what they can achieve. And Philadelphia are committed to it and in the early years of their 25-year ongoing plan. And that's the timescale we're talking about to actually make this difference. So how's retrofitting different to new build SuDS? It's really a very different approach in both the design and in the building of it. Because we have different sites constraints. And particularly in urban areas, the biggest constraint is going to be the existing services that are providing a spaghetti junction underneath the piece of land that we're probably looking at. So the design criteria are very much about the specific sites, but of course it gives us great opportunities in things like brownfield land site redevelopment. And it's going to be engineering, and it's going to be bioengineering, and it's going to be mixed with the green stuff. But that's going to be a key factor to being able to deliver this. But it requires this completely individualistic approach, and the approach is frequently of linear features rather than the network that we see when we're dealing with new build. So the important thing is to be creative and to be opportunistic, but also to be aware that it can be expensive. And the way that we can deal with that or improve that situation is to align it with other outcomes and people. And that brings me to working in partnership, because we just cannot deliver this in the urban environment unless we collaborate and we work in partnership. So we're going to seek partnership funding with all stakeholders, and it's not just about people that own land, it's about people who've got an interest in it. So whether it's local authorities or water companies, who might we work with the EA, with LEPs, with bids, local commercial organisations, third sector, radio and television, because it's not just about cash. It's about communications and engaging with people as much as anything else. We absolutely have to have community champions, people who want to talk about it and take it forward. And we also have to understand that community engagement is massively time-consuming and therefore is expensive, but absolutely essential. And in doing this, we must be completely genuine and open in what we're doing, in building those partnerships, and be honest both about what we can deliver and the timescales for doing so. So just quickly and I'll whiz through this, what you can do where, because my point that I'm making here is really we can do this all the time and everywhere. Any building at any point can be retrofitted to include rainwater harvesting or using tanks for water for external roofs. Aligning thinking about blue, green or brown roofs when you're looking at roofs that need repair or renewal, on houses depaving drives and disconnecting downpipes. And the more we upscale it from houses to flats and apartments, the more opportunities there are to do different and more interesting things. Improving the urban environment, both in terms of flood resilience and water quality, but also amenity and biodiversity. Car parks, surprisingly, also have their potential. Reconfigure. Look at when they're being repaved, and consider collecting rainwater for recycling. Some interesting initiatives happening around car washes and things like that. School grounds, still far too much tarmac. What can we do about that? Aligning soft suds with the curriculum. There's a very strong synergy between those two. And roads and highways, I mean, this is a really, really big opportunity. Whenever we make interventions, whether we're widening, narrowing, traffic management, light rail, all of the things that we're doing in terms of changing that urban environment, we've got the opportunity to integrate SuDS within them. And at the biggest scale, you know, the urban design, city parks, town centre regeneration. We've now got commercial and retail redevelopment happening all the time. Why aren't we thinking about this there? Why is brownfield land allowed to just do betterment and not to go back to greenfield runoff rates? At the smaller scale, verges and roundabouts, simple stuff, you know, great opportunities, and meanwhile projects for temporary spaces. So just very quickly, this is looking at a very typical suburban area where flooding occurs downstream, but looking at a site upstream as to where an existing small brook and overland flows are affecting a site and causing sewer surcharging. Very much starting first principles from the Environment Agency and their engagement with local people about understanding the problem and contributing to what can be done and where. Then looking at those opportunities in the public open space, not terribly exciting public open space, and many front gardens that were just grasses, and how they could actually, a number of those have rain gardens fitted to them. Aligning the design with the engineering to achieve 1 in 100 storm event capacity within the public open spaces, but very much working with individual householders, asking them, what sort of rain garden would you like in your front garden? And then allowing them to choose both the colour scheme and some of the plants within them, within fixed parameters, and getting them to engage with how that might be fitted in, sometimes very much squashed into their gardens. But at the same time, keeping that awareness of SuDS and understanding that this is actually, it might look nice, but this is providing your essential drainage for this site. And then just very quickly, I wanted to show you a couple of current projects in London, two that I particularly like. This is the LIFE project undertaken by Groundwork for Hammersmith and Fulham Council, and that was looking at three different estates within the area, and you can see the number of properties that were flooded there. So again, very typical of some of our older estates, rather unprepossessing areas of public open space, not doing very much at all. And the interventions that were proposed for two of those sites, and a whole range, as you can see, and these options developed in conjunction with the local community. And what we end up with is some very thoughtful, well-designed, but quite simple interventions that together are having a big impact in terms of food growing, green and brown roofs, rain gardens, tree trenches, and I like this one, the stony attenuation basin. But nicely designed and beautifully implemented and enjoyed very much by the people and effective. And then just quickly to say, we do re-roof things, and when we do, there's an opportunity. This is Beach Street at the Barbican. The waterproofing was shot, listed building, so very special circumstances here. This all needed sorting out. And what we've now got is something that's vibrant, that's biodiverse, and is making a major contribution. So what I'd like to think is that those two projects in particular show you that we can do it, and that we can deal with water quality, with water quantity, with amenity and biodiversity in an effective and beautiful way. So remember, we've got to nibble at this problem until it goes away, all the time and everywhere. So develop the mindset, collaborate, find the synergies, and then you can maximise all the benefits. Thank you.